Hey everybody, this is Games Plus James and welcome back to our Unity RPG tutorial series. Now in the previous episode we added some simple sound effects to the game, so while we're running around the place hitting our little slime enemy guys, we get some nice little swooshy sound effects and various different things as we get hit and stuff like that. So the next thing we want to do is add some actual music into the game, because obviously it's all well and good to have various sound effects, but the game feels very empty and very boring without kind of some music to accompany our little adventures. And also it adds a sense of it kind of sets the tone of the game. So if you have like some dark, mysterious music, obviously the game is going to feel more dark, but if you got something nice and happy and bright, the game feels more fun and bright and adventurous, I don't know. But yeah, so we've got a couple of music files that are included in the download for our RPG series here, which is, the links will be of course down in the description as usual. So what I'm going to do is just open this folder here I have of the music, and we're going to go, we need to go into our audio folder, and we're going to create a new subfolder of this that we'll call music, and then we're just going to drag these two new files into here. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a music manager that will allow us to control the music in the game. And obviously we're going to want to keep our music playing as we switch from scene to scene, but we might want to, for example, start music playing, switch to a different track when we go to a new area, or we might want to switch to a different track when we walk into a certain zone of a map. So that's what we're going to create now, a simple little system to handle that. We just need to wait for this to add it into Unity and finish compressing the files or whatever, or adding the files to the system. So once our files are brought into Unity, just the way we want them to be, the first thing we're going to do is set up an object in our hierarchy here to handle our music in the game. So we're going to create an empty object first that we will call our music manager, and then we're going to drag these two bits of music here. If I can select both of them, if it will let me. There we go, it just kind of froze up for a second there. So we select the two of them and we'll drag them into our hierarchy. We won't drag them onto our music manager, we'll just drag them into the hierarchy here. If it'll, for some reason it wouldn't drop them in there. So once they're into the world, then we can make them a child of the music manager, because obviously if we have our music manager, we want our music to be organized underneath that. We don't want our music to automatically play as soon as the game starts, because we don't want two separate bits of music playing at once. But we do want them to loop, so that once they finish playing, they'll just start back over and keep going over and over again. Because, again, it would get very boring if our music just played once and then stopped going. So, now that we have that in place, obviously at the moment, if we start the game, nothing will play. I mean, we could very straightforwardly just have one bit of music in every area of our game, and we wouldn't need to do a music manager. We could just have simple little bit of music. For example, our Blipstream one here, we'll go with Overworld. If we had that set to play on Awake and we started playing our game, as soon as it started going, we'd have our music playing away, and that would be fine. That's the most basic way to have your music playing in a game, and that would be absolutely perfectly usable if you wanted to. But we want to do a few more different things with that. So we're going to make sure that our music doesn't play when we start, and we're going to create a script to handle making our music play. So we'll go into our scripts folder, and we're going to create a new C# script, and we'll call this our music controller. And we'll open this up in MonoDevelop. Now obviously this being the overarching thing which is going to control our music, much like we have with our sound effects manager and stuff like that, we're going to want this to persist between scenes. So as soon as we start using this in our game, we want it to keep being active. And that will also make sure that our music keeps playing between scenes as well. So as I said a second ago about having different music in each area of your game, say if you wanted to have the same bit of music in one area as in the next area, you don't want that music to restart when you go into a new area. So it's much more sensible to have a music controller like this that will keep the music playing as you go. So to keep our music playing, obviously we're going to want to do much like we've done before and add a public static bool that we'll call MC exists, for music controller exists. And then in our start function, we're just going to do much like we've done before and say if our if not MC exists. Actually, what we can do is just copy from our sound effects manager, because we've already done that on that. So we can just copy the same bit of code that is there, and we'll just paste it in here into our start function, and switch out SFX man exists for MC exists, like that. So there we go, perfect. We'll just save that, and now we know we have our music controller keeping active as we go. But now that we have that little thing sorted out, let's actually set up how we're handling our music in the game. So if we're going to have multiple different music tracks being used, we're going to need a reference to all those music tracks. So what we're going to do is create an array of audio sources, which will be our tracks in the game. So we're going to create a public audio source array that we're going to call, we'll just call it music tracks. And to be able to keep track of which tracks are active within the game, we want to have a value being used to say what is the current track basically that should be playing. So we have a public bool that we'll call current track. And the final thing we want to have is to know whether music should currently be playing or not. So say for example we walk into a spooky area or something like that, you might want to just make all the music immediately turn off. So what we'll do is just have another bool that will just have a public bool current track. And I just realized for some reason, not current track, sorry, public bool music can play, like that. And I just realized this shouldn't be a current track bool. As I said, this should be a number letting us know which track is currently playing, so that should be an int value. I don't really know why I put down bool there, but it should be an int value, because obviously we need to know, for example, we're playing track 1 at the moment, we're playing track 5, we're playing track 7, whatever. We want to know which one we should be playing at any particular time. So to make our music play, what we want to do is in our update loop, we'll obviously know what our current track is, and say, for example, when we start the game, our current track is going to be 0, because why would we want a different track? We want to set our first track that we'll encounter in the game as 0. That just makes sense. So we're going to assume that current track is 0 at the moment. So what we want to do is in our update loop here, first thing we want to check is if music can play at the moment. So if music can play, so if our music can play, then we want to do something. Otherwise, if our music can't play, then the thing we want to do is make sure that the current track isn't playing, so that there's no music playing at all. So what we can just say is, in our music tracks, whatever is our current track that's active, we want to say that it is stopped. So music tracks dot stop. So that'll stop the sound from playing. But that's all fine and dandy, but obviously we want to make sure that music actually does play in the game. So assuming that our music can play is set to be true, the next thing we want to do is check if our music is currently playing at the moment. So if music tracks dot sorry, not dot current tracks, if music tracks square bracket for our current track, so we're looking in the array for whatever our current track is, we want to check, see, is that playing? And what we're checking to see is if it is not playing. So if our music isn't playing, we need to make it start going. So we can just say, in that case, go to music tracks, go to the current track. I can't spell that properly. Go to the current track within our music tracks array and dot play. So start playing the music within the game. And at a very basic level, that's our little simple music setup going. So we can go back into the game and set this up here on our music manager. Let it compile for a second, and then we can go to our music manager, drag the music controller on top of it. Then we're going to drag our two music tracks. I'm going to put Overworld as the first track and then Blipstream as the second one. So current track will be 0. Obviously we want music can play by default from the start. So now if we start playing the game, what we should see is our Overworld music starts to play just the way we want it to. So that's perfectly fine. If we were, for example, just to switch that to current track being 1, So that would be element 1 in our array. Let it play. And you can hear the different music is now playing. So perfect, that's exactly what we wanted to do. But of course, we don't want it to just be able to do that. We want to be able to switch the tracks as we go through the game. So how can we do that? Well, in our music controller, what we're going to do is add a function down below. We're going to add a public void, a function that we're going to call switch track. And in switch track, what we want to do is pass in an int value that we're going to call new track. So this will be just a number that we want to, that will call from another script, and we'll call it into here and we'll say, okay, basically go to this new track, stop whatever current track is playing and switch to a new track. So if we want to stop whatever current track is playing, we can use what we have here. So we'll go to our music tracks, use our get our current track and stop it. Then what we'll do is set our current track to be equal to whatever the new track value is here. So we'll say current track is equal to new track, and now again we will start our music playing. So we'll go into our music tracks, go to current track, and we'll use that play on that, and we can save that. So obviously we've set up this function here, but of course at the moment that doesn't do anything by itself. So what we'll need to do is create a new script that we're going to attach to an object, and we're going to call this script music. Oh, we're just compiling the old script there for a second. It just took a second. So we're going to call this music switcher. Again, we'll open this up in MonoDevelop, and we'll basically have two options on our music switcher here. We'll have it so that it can either be when the player walks into a particular zone on the map, so a particular trigger box is what we'll use. If a player walks into that, then it'll activate to switch to a new track. Or we could also have it set up so that when the player, when a scene first opens, it'll straight away switch to a new bit of music. So what we'll do is we'll obviously need a reference to the music controller. So we're going to create a private music controller that we'll call the MC for music controller, and in our start function we'll need to find that straight away. So we'll say the MC is equal to find object of type music controller, just like that. The next thing we want to do, we'll obviously need to know the number of the new track that we want our music manager to switch to. So we'll say public int, and we'll call this new track because that makes the most sense really. And finally, we want to do, as I said, we might want to set this up so that it makes it switch as soon as the new level starts. So we'll have this be public bool switch on start. So basically what we'll have is if our switch and start value is set to be true, then we'll make it switch to a new music track as soon as it starts. And how we'll do that is by going into our start function here, and we'll simply say if switch on start is true, then what we'll do is we'll call on our MC, we'll call the new function that we just created. So that's our switch track function here. So we'll say the MC dot switch track, and then in our brackets here we're going to pass in our new track value here. So that'll be new track, and that's basically all we have to do there, and that'll make it automatically switch when we go into a new area, and we'll demonstrate that in a second. But before we do that, we're also going to add the ability for our player to walk into a zone and make that switch to music. So as usual, if we're dealing with a trigger box, what we want to do is our void on trigger enter 2D collider 2D other, and we're going to say if the other game object name is equal to player. So if a player walks into this zone, then the first thing we want to do is switch the track. So we're going to do the exact same thing we did here. So we go to our MC and call the switch track function, and we're going to go to the new track. And the next thing we want to do is make sure that our game object that set active is false. So we want to deactivate the object in the world, because otherwise what will happen is our player will walk into this zone and it'll switch to the new track. But if our player walks out of the zone and walks back in again, what it'll do is basically just reset the track, because it'll call that function again on the track. So it'll go to our music controller, it'll stop the current track, set the current track to be the new track, and it'll start it playing all over again. So we obviously don't want that to happen. So what we'll do is deactivate the whole trigger box, and that will make sure that if a player walks back into the same area, it won't have any effect on the music in the game. So we go back into our Unity, wait for that to compile, and then we're going to add a little trigger zone into the game here, just to demonstrate how that works. So we'll create a new empty object that we're going to call our we'll just call it switch music, just for nice and simple. And we're going to add our script to that. So if our music manager is starting out with current track 0, we want our switch music to go to track 1. Then we're going to add a box collider to this script. So box collider 2D. Actually, it just occurred to me, if we are using our music switcher and we are making it immediately switch track on start, so we should also deactivate the object in the game world, just in case we have it kind of default set up as a trigger zone, and for some reason you accidentally leave this trigger zone in the middle of a map or something like that, which is something that can easily occur by accident and something you might casually forget about. We don't want that to happen. So as soon as it switches tracks in the start function here, we're going to do the same thing and make sure that the object deactivates itself. Okay, so we go back in here again. So we have our box collider attached to our object now. Wait for that to compile for a second, because it'll be all hitchy and slow. And what I'm going to do is just make this box a little bit bigger, and I'm just going to move it over so it's beside the house here, just so we know where it is. And now if we start our game running, you can hear our music going away there. And if we walk down here, oh no, well, we need to make sure that this box is a trigger zone, not a solid object, of course. So second time's the charm. We'll go down here, walk over to the house, and there you go. You can hear that we switched into the new bit of music. And just to make sure that our switch and track music is actually working for us, do we have a zone to switch to the village here? I'm trying to remember. We've got a house entry. No, we don't, for some strange reason. Okay, I'm just going to quickly set this up. So we're going to set this so that instead of going to house inside, we're going to go to the village. So where is our house entry? And we're going to go to, I'm going to go to village like that. And we'll save this. So now we can play. Oh, well, obviously we need to set this up, actually, sorry. We need to go to our village scene. And we're going to create a new object again. We're going to create a music switch. We're going to add the script to it. Again, we're going to set it so that it goes to track 1. And we're going to set this one so that it goes to switch on start. And no, we don't need to play from here. We need to go back to our first scene. Save this. Go back to our main scene. We're going to hit play. And now, if I can manage to avoid this area here before I walk into the house. So our music is playing away, you can hear it. Oh, we haven't added that scene to our build settings. Of course, that would be too straightforward that it would all immediately work straight away. So we'll just try this one more time here. Walking over. Oh, no, I managed to walk into the zone. Hold on, I'm going to deactivate this object from our world. This time, third time will be the charm. And get out here, you. Don't need to worry about that guy. But there you go. As you can see, we switched over to this new scene and we loaded in and the music played just the way we wanted to play, and it's all working absolutely perfectly. So there you go, a very simple and straightforward music controller, but it works very well for what we want to do with our game, and it makes us have a little bit more control of the music within our world. So there you go, thanks for watching this episode, and I will be back soon with some more tutorial goodness.